Hi, I'm Ben Scragg, and I'm going to share with you some teaching frameworks for integrating technology into your courses. And when you're thinking about integrating technology, there's some areas that you might consider finding value or benefit. So content is one area where technology is going to allow us to create or find, and maybe even free open source content that's really valuable and useful. Pedagogy, and particularly what we'll explore in this module, is one of those areas where the introduction of technology allows us to do things that maybe we couldn't do before, or have students learn material or create assignments in ways that they couldn't. You can bring a multitude of voices and perspectives by accessing global connections. The ubiquity and mobility of technology allows students to, and faculty, to work in ways and in places where they haven't. And technology provides a kind of ownership for students, maybe in how we construct assignments and do work, and we'll explore that too. So a couple of things as we get started. Our lives are embedded richly with technology. In a lot of ways, a lot of the technology we use, we probably don't even recognize as technology. The way we communicate, the way we shop, the way we wayfind. In a lot of ways, technology is integrated seamlessly around us, particularly with mobile devices. And the classroom is one of those areas where we can kind of take those everyday unseen elements and incorporate them into our class. So a couple of models we want to share with you briefly. The first is the TPACK model from Mishra and Kohler. It was introduced around 2005, building on Schulman's work of pedagogical knowledge and content knowledge. So TPACK adds the technological element in there. It kind of meets in the center of that Venn diagram. And the interesting thing about TPACK as a construct is it also introduces the idea of a context. So you're not just thinking about the knowledge you need pedagogically as a teacher. You're not just thinking about the content knowledge you might need as an expert in your field. And you're not just thinking about technological knowledge for its own sake. You're really thinking about where do those three meet in my particular context and how do I leverage those. The next model that's worth exploring is also the SAMR model. The SAMR model was developed by Ruben Buenaventura in 2006. And the SAMR model stands for substitution, augmentation, modification, and redefinition. SAMR is a really interesting model. It's being used primarily in K-12 spaces and has grown widely in popularity. It's just starting to be studied critically in peer-reviewed research. But SAMR is really interesting because it provides a kind of a taxonomy for the kinds of activities you would do while teaching with technology. So substitution, for example, might be using technology that replaces something you're already doing, using an office suite to type notes instead of write them. And at the other end of kind of the taxonomy of redefinition, you're creating entirely new ways of teaching and learning. Maybe it's media production for an assignment or a critique, or maybe it's engaging social media. What we're finding with SAMR is that a lot of people have a tendency to be competitive and feel like SAMR's a scale you've got to reach to an end or an achievement. And what we'd like to suggest to folks is SAMR is really a way of thinking about the kinds of activities. Some of your classroom activities might only require substitution. Some could use redefinition. And so a great way to think about SAMR is not necessarily as a taxonomy or as a ladder you should climb. Some of the visual models for SAMR represent it as a pool of water, a body of water with a shallower end and a deeper end. And that's not necessarily with respect to the depth or the value of the educational experience. It's simply a way to think of how do I use technology tools and what benefit would I get from them in a classroom. And so one model that we'll explore shortly really takes a look at this idea of enhancement versus transformation using technology. And so that's Alan November's Transformational 6. And Alan November is an educational consultant, worldwide leader, who has created these 6 transformational questions. And it's kind of a critique of SAMR, but it's also kind of an augmentation to SAMR, which is if you really want to make your classroom transformational, what are some considerations you should think about when integrating technology? And so questions like, does your assignment build capacity for critical thinking on the web? Does your assignment create opportunities to broaden the perspective, a conversation with an authentic or global audience? These are questions that technology is really poised to help students take advantage of and makes this an exciting time to think about what's possible, particularly related to student ownership. Ultimately, I would make the case that the real appeal for some of the technological tools and frameworks around teaching and learning today is the value of reaching a global audience and making a global connection with the diverse voices, with the incredible capabilities we have. It's a really exciting time. And as Corey said in the introduction, it's really not about the technology, it's about the teaching. And I think thinking about these frameworks as ways to explore how you do good teaching with technology is pretty exciting. Thanks.